I get this a lot. Like people will say, Rolo, act your age. Rolo, you need to cut your hair. Rolo, you're take that beanie off. Right. And I posted a series of like 6 pictures of me without my hat on or without my beanie on, which I've done on my Instagram. Yeah. And I'll refer them. I'll say, here's your link. Go one out. Right. But the thing that gets me all the time is I get guys, and maybe you guys get this occasionally too, because you're successful. You got style. I know the chicks you've been with. The girl that like opened you at Babes in Toyland. I know the caliber of women that you were just before the show. You're showing us like stuff in your inbox, right? I know what you're capable of because I've seen it happen. Well, I definitely know what you're capable. But the thing is like I think a lot of people think that like if you're older, especially if you're in your 50s, like you ought to be a grandpa. Like people that they love to use that as some sort of insult, right? I play in a band, by the way. Thank you very much. Now I do again. Thank you, Lindsay. I've never really been the guy who will do what people want me to do, right? I stylistically or like personal life wise, I do the things that I am interested in, and my look. I change my look all the time. I used to look like Frank Underwood from a House of Cards back in the day, right? When I was working for the liquor industry. Or people will go back and they'll go back to my YouTube channel, or they'll go and look at me giving live talks on the 21 convention, and they go, "Wow, Rolo looks so old in this." And I was like probably 10 years, 8 years younger in those ones, and I had my hair like military cropped short, right? And then I decided I was going to grow my hair out because I knew my mother wasn't going to be around too much longer, and she asked me, she says, "I loved it when you had long hair. Will you grow it out again?" And that was my mother's dying request. It's that I would grow my hair out, and then I started playing in bands and everything, so I just kept it the way it was. And I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I don't give 2 flying fucks what anyone says about like, oh, you need to do it. But I think what's interesting is there's this expectation that guys like our age should look a certain way. Like maybe this is it. I don't know. Maybe this is it. Clearly this is not it. And so I'm like, well, what does that look like to you? What does grow up look like to you? And I think a lot of people think that I ought to be sitting at home watching Seinfeld and bouncing my grandchild on my fucking knee and talking about the good old days, right? And I'm like, where the fuck are you getting this from? And I think that one of the things, especially for guys who are like a 45 to 65-year-old demographic, the guys that we're looking at right now, I think maybe like breaking out of that mentality is something that we need to sort of address for the guys that we're trying to help, right? So for instance, when you're looking at Harold was like he's 57, 58, something like that. And, we had to go and help him out stylistically. And stylistically meaning we're not putting him in sensible Dockers and fucking some sort of loafers or some shit like that, and we're going to give him a nice brown shirt that's a button down, and that's not what we're about. And I don't think we actually ought to have to be about that stylistically anyways. But it's not even so much stylistically, it's also mentally. Like you ought to think the way that I expect a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old, a 80-year-old, whatever it is. It's like every time it's like act your age. It's like, well, do you know how old I am? They wouldn't know about that. But I think it's funny that there's this, they're almost indignant that you don't fit their image, their mental archetypal image in their head of what a guy who is 58 years old. Do you guys deal with that with anyone else?
Just family.
Or is that just, well, yeah, that might be it too,
the older
right?
women in my family.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Or then, and I fired back here. And I just realized this recently is like, you'll know you've made it as an influencer when you can't post a single picture, like me and Ned. Like I can't post that without somebody going, "That's not a flex, man." Why do you think that every picture I put up is a flex? Like I posted a shot of myself on the back of Fresh's Audi. He has an R8 or something like that, right? And we were in Miami, and he needed a new shot for the thumbnail, right? That's all he was doing. I thought it was a good shot, so I put it up there. They go, "Is that your car? Oh man, imagine having so much money that you ripped off from all these poor helpless incels that you could buy an R8," kind of thing. You got all of that from one picture. And I know that haters are are fairly rare. They're just vocal. Like you're only seeing the hate, right? So like for every one hater, there's like, you got 1,000 people are your fans, right? But I thought it's interesting that all the haters follow the same pattern. They follow the same framework, which is act your age, come back into the, like drag you back into my expectations of you. And I'm always going to defy your expectations no matter what. And I'm wondering if that's not a sort of an obstacle for guys who are sort of coming back into the sexual marketplace after a divorce.
Yeah. I think
Did you have to deal with it?
It is a little bit like you can get it from family. But also like when we were at XS the other night, one of the older women came up to me and she was like, you shouldn't be with younger women. And so
that's another one. Yeah.
And
Wait, they said that?
Yeah.
Yeah. She, and I was like, but Ryan Stone recommended a really great book called, When I Say No, I Feel Bad. And it talks about fogging. So I just kept asking her, it's like, well, but why? What's wrong? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with, dating someone or seeing someone that's younger, and get them to just keep talking about it.
Right.
But yeah, it does come up, but I think that,
pretty much all, like, what's your, let's just say average demographic of women that you're interested in or that you're like dating right now?
Do you have a demographic that you're interested in?
Like, is there too old or too young?
And good looking.
Yeah.
Fit and good looking is your demographic.
I mean, yeah. Well, if you're going to ask me what I look for in a woman, it would be fit and fun, because that fit tells me a lot about their personality and who they are. But like, yeah, when you were saying demographic, I was like, oh, is he talking about age or? And I also like to abide by what Dr. Glover says in his book, Dating Essentials. You just walk through open doors. You meet someone and they're attracted to you, they're attracted to you. So you talk to them and you get to know them. And whatever that, whoever she is whoever she is, because attraction is attraction. I can't exactly explain it, but yeah, we try to keep things simple. So like fit, we both said the same thing, fit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Fit's number one.
I think, and what you were saying earlier, like when you were saying like, you're kind of ratting me out a little bit as far as like, I'm around attractive women. Even Mike has said this before. He said, like when he goes on, and sometimes I even see this in his Zoom calls and stuff, there was some guy will come in and they'll start popping off about me. Right. Yeah. They'll say, well, I can't believe you're associated with Rollo. He's so cringe, that kind of shit. And then Mike will be like, well, no, dude, we do Access Vegas like pretty much every other week. And like the girls love him. Right. I mean, he's like, you don't know because you're not there to see. And all they're really doing is sort of getting this secondhand.
No, you can see it. You can see it on the podcast.
Exactly.
You can see that.
I'm actually a pretty social guy. I know what I'm doing. I've been married for a while and I actually am pretty good at that. But I think we were on we were Adam Soxnick's show. Yeah. And it was not the last time, but the time before. It was myself, Sterling Cooper, and Mike were on the show. And there's just about 10 years between each of us. Like I'm 56, Mike's 46, and Sterling Cooper's 36. Now, when I'm hanging out with Sterling Cooper, who, by the way, is going to be coming out to Vegas towards the middle end of July, I'm not thinking, oh, he's 20 years younger than I am. What are we ever going to talk about? He's from a different I don't think that. Yeah. Because we have some sort of shared common interest, which of course is intersexual dynamics and red pill stuff, but he's also a cool dude. Like I've gone mountain bike riding with him in Lake Tahoe too. And we had a fucking blast. We didn't talk about any red pill shit. We were just out there on trails, right? And trying not to injure ourselves. But I mean, he's just a good guy. But like when I'm doing that, I'm not thinking, oh, I'm of a different generation than this guy is. And so I need to impart some old man wisdom to this guy. I don't even think of that.
We don't talk like that.
No, not at all. Yeah. And I think honestly, and this was more to the point with the whole age, generational thing. I'm really against this idea of what I call generationalism. Like everybody wants to sort of pigeonhole you as, oh, you're a Zoomer, you're a millennial, you're an Xer, a Gen Xer, you're a Boomer. Right. And so each one of those is almost like an astrological sign right now. So if you're a part of that generation, then you're always like this and you're like this and you're a millennial. So you're like disaffected and despondent and pissed off and depressed. And you're a Generation X. Sorry, I'm going to rat you out, Aaron Clary. Generation X is like we were 30 when we were 15 and we're 30 when we're 50. Like that's you don't do anything else and you don't mess with the latchkey kids because we'll like chew a hole right through you, right? And then there's the Zoomers who just like are the Zoomers, right? I think that's kind of unfair because you're technically a Zoomer, and I like you. Yeah.
Appreciate that. That's saying a lot.
And you know what? I don't think you're 24, right? So yeah, you're Zoom. You're not lazy. You're not jerking off in your mom's basement somewhere. I don't know how much weed you smoke. You don't smoke any weed. You're actually in charge of I would say at least a multi-million-dollar company, right?
Assistant. I don't want to say I'm in charge.
In charge of it, but you're working in. I mean, you're an entrepreneur by anybody's measure. I would say it's to most degree, and you're Gen Z. So I think it would be very. I would be insulting you if I thought that you were a typical, Gen Zer, right? The other guy who, CJ, who was the second guitarist in my old band, Trial of Ascension, he's probably 2 years older than you. He's got 2 kids. He's one of the upper management guys for Tesla. He is a quote unquote Zoomer. And I'm like, he does not fit the stereotypical Zoomer archetype. So I think it's time we sort of give up on this bullshit about like generationalism, because like I said, it's like almost like modern day like MBTI or astrology or some shit like that, because I think we need to take people on a case by case basis at this point. And the reason I say
for
that,
me, like I feel like most of my male friends are over 30.
Well, yeah, probably. And
almost all of them actually.
And so like, for instance, when I'm hanging out with like Maya Allegra, right? She's 22. She's younger than my daughter, right? But we can talk. We actually have, like, she's very interesting. She's a very intelligent person. She was the first one I called because we needed a younger girl for the interview that we did about like entrepreneurship with Robert Kiyosaki. And she hit me up. She says, I would really like to be a part of that panel because I have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm like, holy fuck. You're 22 and you've read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Yes, you're on the show, right? And we had her as the youngest, and I think we had like Kaylin Franca, and she was the oldest. She's like mid to late 30s, I think. Yeah. And I'm not thinking, oh, she's 22 and Kaylin's 38 or 39, right? I'm not, or, Robert Kiyosaki's older than I am. Like, he's in his 70s. If I'm working on a project and I'm working on something of like sort of a bi-story basis, I'm not thinking in terms of generation. But that's the first fucking thing that will come out of a woman's mouth who's saying, I can't believe you're dating younger girls. What will you ever talk about?
I think it's the crabs in the bucket theory, because you have the women who look at you and they understand that you have the ability to date someone younger.
Right.
And they don't want you to do that. They want you to wait for them. They want you to not take those opportunities, because then you would have to settle for someone that's older.
Right.
And for men, it's the same thing. Older men would say the same thing because they don't have the ability to be able to date younger women like we would. And
so here's the obvious question. Can older guys in our demographic get with much younger girls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. What demographic?
I actually think, just from seeing the ranges of it, I think it's honestly easier.
I think so.
It's easier for
why would you say that?
Guys who are, I guess, like 30 and up to get women who are in their 20s than it is for me. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that. So I actually think it's the opposite.
Yeah. And why do you think that is?
Because I think that a lot of things that women are going to be more attracted to in a man just come more with age, whether that's resources, experience, money, leadership, all that stuff will usually come with someone who's older.
Yeah. I had this conversation with Mike once, and we were talking about TRT and how
that too.
Like, that's the first thing people say, like, well, Rollo, man, he's put on so much muscle, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, yeah, I also work out with Hide Yamagishi from Powerhouse Gym here in Vegas too. It doesn't just magically like appear on your body if you take TRT, right? But people will say, you take TRT, you're cheating. You're cheating by doing that, right? Nobody says, oh, well, women who are on menopause are cheating by taking estrogen and taking, hormones like that. Only guys are cheating if they do that. And I think that really kind of boils down to like the generational thing, because I think guys who are like in their 20s, and there's women who are in their 20s, maybe early 30s, are getting statistically with guys who are older than, well, put it this way, older than 30, Mac and Murphy. Because the demographic is 18 to 29. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the stats for I might even have them out, for single versus in a relationship, I think it's like 34% of women are single, whereas like 63 or 64% of guys in that age demographic are single.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're saying, well, where are all these women? Well, how are these women in these relationships if they're not in the relationship with a guy who is in that same age cohort. And it's like, yeah, well, the obvious answer that no one seems to want to say is they're dating guys who are at least 30 years or older, because then they'd be out of the cohort, right?
Right.
So we're not saying that it's like Leonardo DiCaprio getting with, the 26 or 20, well, that'd be too old. Sorry, 23 to 24 year olds, right? But it would have to be at least older than 30.
Yeah.
So, so when we look at those stats, something's going on there, and it's either women of that cohort don't find those guys attractive, or guys who are older now in this data age, and guys like such as yourself, successful guys, they have the ability to get with younger women because you have more of what women find attractive. So when I was sort of having it out with like Mac and Murphy came at me as saying like, well, you don't see 23-year-old girls getting with guys who are like 36 or 37, because that's where I pay.
Or 56.
Or 56, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
never happens.
Ever. Not on YouTube anyway.
No.
It only happens on Rumble. But there's almost this indignation. And I think the reason for that is because those guys realize that when it comes to like hypergamy, when it comes to things that women find most attractive, it takes longer for men to accrue those things than but 24 years old. I love you, Tristan. But and the funny thing is you're on top of your game.
Yeah.
And you make money. You're here. You live in Vegas. You have access to Vegas, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have opportunities. You work for MOA, so it's not difficult for you to meet.
No one
women
thinks
and
I'm
everything.
24.
So that's why I said I wouldn't have guessed. But so you're in a kind of a unique position, and you're still saying to me that even that you see women of your same age that are dating guys
especially
that are
here,
older.
because you can't not be 21 in Vegas. When I'm back at school, it's a little different because there are women who are like 18. So I am older than them. Like I'm an older guy to them.
Sure.
But when it's in Vegas where you can't not be 21, I feel like most attractive women here, I don't like the only, attractive women here that I know that are under 25. The only one I've ever met was Kylie.
Yeah.
Kylie's the only one.
Mhm.
Everyone is at least 25, 26. So, even for them, they are usually dating a guy who's a little bit older, not much older, but definitely in his 30s.
Sure. And what's funny to me is, and I've got this kind of like, I guess it's a joke, but like it's this pithy little saying that we've always said since back in the old days, is that scientists and psychologists are always surprised to see Mother Nature fucking the mailman, right? They're always surprised. Oh, it's so shocking that no, it's not shocking, especially if you're like you're in Vegas, if you're you're in the sexual marketplace. There's nothing shocking about it until you go and you write an article about it and you realize you have to sort of, pick and choose your words very carefully, because if you don't, you might not have a writing gig after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I see people who are like criticizing some of my work, I'm like, you just simply don't understand the work, first of all. But what I'm saying is, like when guys hit 36, 37, 38 years old, that's usually when they're hitting their stride. That's when they may partner in the law firm. That's when they become a surgeon. They are done with the residency, right? They're actually starting to make some money and start to be more, they have accrued more of the things, assuming they maximize their potential, accrued more of the things that make them maximally attractive than they ever could have when they were 26, right? Because it took longer for them to get to that. And does that mean that 23-year-olds are going to be, girls are going to be specifically targeting 36, 37, 38-year-olds? No, they're not. Of course not. You know why? Because they're not targeting anybody at all. They're 23. They're at the peak of their agency. They're not looking to settle down. They're not looking to fucking find a husband or anything like that. They're enjoying themselves at the height of their sexual selection. So to say that, that guys who are 30, guys who are 40, guys who are 50 are trying to pretend like we still got it, right? I love that stigma. I'm sure you guys have probably heard that before. Like you're having a midlife crisis. Have you been told you're having a midlife crisis?
Oh, yes.
You have?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
From who?
Well, and I'll joke about it because they'll be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going through my midlife crisis." Of course,
Again?
don't you know?
A
You know?
green apple.
You got a Camaro.
Yeah. It's like, what do you got that
No, it's
motorcycle for?
Corvette.
A
It's
Corvette.
like,
yeah.
For the old white dudes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what you got? Did you have a Corvette?
No, I don't.
No, you don't have a. You
That's
don't
a
have
joke.
What kind of car do you do?
Just Toyota.
Toyota?
Avalon.
Tacoma?
Avalon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I've got it.
that's
I got a
good.
Tacoma. I got my hillbilly car, my redneck car, and I got my muscle car.
Yeah.
But yeah, you literally cannot get away from the fact that people want to like push you back into your age appropriate hole.
Sure.
And I was going to say the reason I brought up the whole thing with Sterling, myself, and Mike was because there's 10 years difference, and I didn't even think about that until Adam actually brought it up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think in terms of age anymore.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to, like I said, if I talk to Maya and she wants to be on the show with Robert Kiyosaki, I'm not thinking, there's 60 years between us, 50 years between the two of them. I'm not thinking that. I'm just going to do it and facilitate it. And it's good content. It's going to be a good show. But according to people who want to shame you back into your hole, that's a bad idea. Right. So I think that's something that we kind of have to like be aware of when we're helping guys who are the 45 to 65-year-old range, because there's going to be sort of that stigma that might be in the back of their head
definitely.
that somebody told them at some point in their lives. So
I've got some older female cousins that are, when they look at my Instagram, they're like, "What's Joe doing?" I've heard that through my sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What's going on
What's
with
he
Joe?
doing? What's wrong with him?
How
come he's not? How come he hasn't settled down with another 58-year-old?
They saw that I had put a
Because
picture
of
on
menopause.
there of a photo shoot we did, and
Yeah.
it was a younger girl at the ATV thing,
Mhm.
right?
Do you get criticized for that? Do you
yeah.
like hanging out? Because obviously you're taking pictures of the girls on Instagram.
Yeah.
When we're at like.
Well, we did a photo shoot with Michael Mata's ATV company.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I just
right.
posted just a picture of
On
one of the
quads
girls.
or something
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. She was like leaning on me like that. And
Do they call you and like?
Oh no. I just
need
heard
an
it when I went back.
intervention.
Right. Yeah. But my sister's like giving me the serious concerned look.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Do you ever get that? Do you get shamed for like?
I don't know that they don't
For
really
your
approach
pictures
like
anyways.
inside the family. Not on my side.
Mhm.
Yeah, it kind of gets left alone. Like you said, I'll get older women that'll be like, why are you, you should be dating us.
Right,
like,
right.
And that's the kind of thing I usually run into. Not so much, the midlife crisis thing. Everybody's like, oh, you're on a bike. Well, just be safe.
Yeah. Be safe.
Just
be safe. Wear your helmet.
Wear your helmet.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, okay, so when I was talking about average age of first divorce, right, which is 45 for men, it's 42 for women. So when women get out of a divorce and they want to go and party and they want to get back into the sexual marketplace and they find out that their competition is Maya Allegra, who's 22, like for that particular age demographic, then it sort of makes sense that they would want to in some way find some methodology to sort of shame you into like getting you back on the plantation or something.
Yeah, because I don't blame them for this. It's not a criticism, but when they're coming back out and they're divorced, maybe there's children involved, they're in asset allocation. They're trying to get provisioning.
Mhm.
They're trying to get provisioning. So a lot of times the feeling that comes across from older women, particular women over 35 or 40, is it's transactional very early. It's not validational.
I see.
They're not
looking for a man with benefits.
Yeah, they're not. If they I think that they'll break rules for certain guys, but when they look at me, they're like, oh, he's boyfriend potential. So I'm going to make a rule for him. I'm not going to break a rule for him. And the problem that they have to understand is I know women that break rules for me. So if you're going to make one for me, I don't need to know you.
Yeah. I got a better one on my, in my DMs right now.
And I think they misunderstand that. Well, no, you'll think that she's so like, oh, but if she sleeps with you, then you'll think she's a slut. It's like, no, I know that she did it because she's doing it for validation. I know the difference. And guys like us, we know the difference. And that actually they'll have a better chance with us long-term than short-term if they're starting to try to write rules for us right off the bat.
Do you think of yourself as an alpha male?
Oh, absolutely. No. Yeah.
Joe, do you think of yourself as an alpha?
I think to me, that's not my primary focus. I believe being an alpha is for society to decide.
Right.
Women decide if I'm an alpha. Other men around me decide if I'm an alpha. I'm still trying to be the best I can be.
Right.
And everybody else can decide that. I don't. You ask me, do I feel it? Yeah, I do feel I am. But that's really from
the reason I asked that is because, like, Joe, you brought this up too, is like when guys come out of the divorce machine, right? The number one most common problem they have is like their self-valuation, like realizing how valuable they are, what their potential is. I think one of the reasons why we need to focus a lot on like physique and fitness, that's one of the first things we say, get in the gym, bro, right? Because 75% of the US population is overweight. So that's probably going to be the first problem that you're going to have to deal with when you're coming out of a divorce, right? But beyond that, like Mike and I always use the female delusion calculator as sort of a metric for this. Yeah. And we do this because originally the calculator was created sort of to show how delusional women were and their standards for these guys, right? To show the margin of like the percentage of the population that this guy represents that you're after, 6 feet tall, 6-figure income, blah, blah, blah. But it's also a very useful tool for guys who don't know what their own personal value is. And it's not even, we're not talking about religion. We're not talking about like personality. We're not talking about like, ideology or political affiliation, or like, does he want to have kids in the future or puppy dogs or whatever? We're just talking about, is he overweight? How much money does he make? How tall is the dude? Because those are the most, and they're easily trackable. It's the CDC and it's the Census Bureau data. It's right there, black and white. Those are the numbers. And then even just using that criteria and putting your own stats into the calculator and realizing that they are probably like, in some cases, like maybe 4% of the population, or maybe even like, I don't know, have you ever done this? Have you ever put your own stats in the female delusion calculator?
Yeah.
Do you know where you're at?
Like less than,
I mean, even if you're in like the 5% or lower, you're still doing pretty goddamn good.
Yeah, man. It was like top 4%, and then like for my age, it was like top 0.01% or something like that.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting. Like I do that for like even personal consults. I don't care how old they are. That's the first place I start them. I say, let's go put your stats in here just so you get an idea of how rare an animal you really are. And I think that probably would. That's one of the things that would really help guys, because guys tend to be more analytical. They tend to be more rational, right? They tend to be more like numbers based, deductive, problem solving based. And if you show them that, and again, it's like basic stats, I think they get a little boost. I did that with Harold, by the way.
Okay.
When I first started working with him.